Hi Russ, how you doing today?
I'm well. I'm well. How are you all?
Well, we're good. We love that painting behind you. So gorgeous. It's one of my favorite ones. It's called Edge. And before we jump into the interview, can you tell me a little bit about that painting because it is just magnificent.
Well, this is painting that I did a couple of years ago now, and like many of my paintings, it's a process, and it I work on layer upon layer upon layer, and then this one just kind of appeared at this finished state, and I stopped. So knowing when to stop is always kind of key. I'd like to say that I always know how to stop, but that's not always the case. But with this one, I think it came to a good resolution.
So it's sort of like the edge of a pond almost during like the foliage season where leaves are, is that what?
Yeah. Interestingly, many people have said edge of a pond. Another person saw kind of the edge of a field with stone wall or a little bit of snow in the background from the fall. So one of the things that I like is that someone can come up with a pond, and someone can come up with a field, and someone else may come up with something entirely different. So that's why, clearly there's an edge, and that's why the name in this particular instance really helped, because you could see the edge of a pond, and somebody else could see the edge of a field, and then someone else sees the edge of something else entirely, of a forest. So
Yeah, I love that about your work. Something that I think is really incredible is the size that you of the canvases that you work on are really very, very large. However, you have a command over them that's really quite unusual. Um, and you always say that you want people to feel as though they could walk into one of your paintings. And that's pretty much exactly how I feel 90% of the time, when we bring paintings of yours into the gallery, um, they transform me in many ways. They just take me out of my current situation, and could literally be walking uh, in that area, looking at the edge of a pond during the fall months. So whether it's a pond, you do a lot of nature. Whether it's the ocean, you just capture everything so brilliantly. Um, so I love the work. So tell us, how are you coping, and how is it affecting positively your creative
well, I
or
think
not?
there's a lot of pent up desire to paint. So I have all of my paints. Before the shutdown, I put all of my paints and brushes and tools in the back of my van, and they've sat there. So so I need to move them into the house and start painting here from home, which is a different thing for me because I really enjoy my studio. My studio is in town in Portland, and that's where I have absolute alone time. And so that's a little different here at home because we have five of us here in the house. So, but I'm going to create that space, and that's what needs to happen. So,
Yeah, your studio, we enjoy going up to the studio too. The paintings are very, very large, as I was saying. So uh, when we have customers that are interested in seeing more of your work, the lovely thing is we can bring them up to the studio, and we have other artists that do that, local artists that will do that, but it's not always necessary. But with your work, uh, it's easier. It's easier for you not to have to carry everything down to the gallery, if we have a private showing type of thing, that people want to see additional pieces of yours. So as I said, that is part of the whole fun of working in such a collaborative way with you and other artists that we have. But so, Russ, can you tell us a little bit? I've often wondered this. Do you start one of these really large paintings, and let's give people an idea of how large the paintings are that we're talking about here. Do we start them on the floor? How do we?
Well, one of them you have up at the gallery is 8 feet by 12 feet, and then it actually gets a little larger than that if we wanted to. And it started on the floor, and it took up the entire floor space of my studio. And it was so large that I had to time my usage of the studio to the drying time, because otherwise I couldn't work on other work while this large painting was drying. So those started off on the floor. Often they start off flat on a flat, large table that I've got. And then they'll periodically, as they dry, I'll work on them upright and move them back flat and turn them around upside down and view them from different angles. So that's often how I work. And we talked about, wanting to, I really do love the idea of walking into a painting, as you mentioned. And some of that comes from both growing up here in Maine and in DC, going to all the different museums and walking up to those paintings and seeing how the artist brought you in closer and closer and closer. And for me, those paintings, like looking in a tide pool in Maine, brought you closer and closer and closer to other worlds. And for me, a successful painting does just that. So put that into the creative part. That means that for me to create those layers, I have to work on the painting flat and build up layer upon layer. So those glazes will go through, and you'll be able to see through the light of the glaze to a lower and lower depth.
And most of the paint you use is oil based.
It's primarily oil. Occasionally I'll start with a acrylic base and then build on top of that. And there's one painting I think that you have at the gallery that was kind of fun. I enjoyed the process of working really quick with paint that will dry really fast. And so that's a very action oriented painting. But that's the rarity. I usually just stick with oils.
So I know that you have a lovely family, and they often are your first critiques. And it's interesting because your wife and I and Jess seem to land on the same things. And that's a lot of fun. Your paintings are, you have some paintings that lean more towards the feminine, some paintings that lean more towards the masculine, but the majority of your paintings really are, they work for both. And I think that we've seen great success. We have, a lot of collectors of your work, Russ, because you're able to appeal to both the male and female sensibilities. And we see a lot of choosing going on in our gallery. And there are so many times when partners don't agree. And so it falls through it falls by the wayside because both people have to love the paintings. So we don't find that as much with your paintings. It's very interesting because for the most part, they combine many different sensibilities. So I have to say from, a gallery owner standpoint, that's wonderful for us. And yeah. And I think it's intriguing because you're able to take that sort of abstraction and allow people to finish the painting themselves, in a sense, with their own eyes. They can be guided by titles. I know that titles are very important with your work, but it doesn't have to stop there. So very interesting work that you're doing. Well, we're going to kind of head along on our way here. Is there anything you want to tell the world about anything? Art, how art is hopeful, any of that, because I'm feeling so lucky that I have an opportunity to cull through all of my artist works right now and let my eyes see beauty. From an artist's perspective, tell us how you're dealing with things.
Well, I think this of all times we've had odd times like this in history, but it's often times like this that remind you that family and nature and art, are a unifying kind of places for us to be grounded, and to be hopeful and move forward. So thanks for talking to me.
Thanks so much. We really enjoyed it. Have a good day.
You too.
Russ.
Yeah.